certainly a tough act to follow, but our next award winner, his whole life has been just raising the bar one step after another. Brent Anderson is here to introduce Paul Gregory, our next award winner.
Evening, everyone. I am honored to introduce my friend, my business partner, and my mentor, Paul Gregory. With almost 50 years in the lighting industry, you can imagine a lot of different accomplishments, a lifetime of accomplishments that Paul has achieved, creating multiple successful lighting companies, Light Lab and then Focus Lighting. Designing probably over 1,000 projects as leader at Focus Lighting. But the accomplishment that I actually think is the most meaningful is his ability and desire to constantly be sharing all of his wisdom, his knowledge, and his education with all of us. You know, two character traits I think help him do this really easily. First, he's really curious. Paul asks really great questions. If you're coming to present a product or perhaps present a design, you better be on your game because he is going to push to separate fact from fiction. And number two, once he figures out what the facts are, he's willing to spread that to all the people he knows. His point of view is that if he shares what he knows with the people around him, then they can spend their time learning the next thing, solving the next problem. Now, to be clear though, this is not normal. Most of us, we don't ask enough questions. We get information at face value. And once we do have the information, we hold it a little too close to the chest. But not Paul. Paul doesn't do that. And it's not just about lighting. It could be about any type of advice. Relationship advice, financial advice. It could be advice about just being a better person. You can imagine a world where, let's say, a young designer at Focus who's working with Paul day in and day out, after quite a bit of questioning and pushing and it might get a little old after a while. And so maybe the next time Paul comes and wants to share the newest piece of information that he's got, that young employee might say, I think he's wrong. I think he's got this one wrong. And if he's brave enough, he might actually challenge Paul on it. And if he does, chances are the next word that the words he's going to hear are, you want to bet? And I can tell you, if you hear those words, there's a really good chance you're wrong. Because in 28 years, I can count the number of bets Paul has lost on one hand. So how do you quantify all the contributions of someone like Paul Gregory? Now, it's probably true that not all of you have learned something from Paul. But I would bet each and every one of you know someone who's learned something from Paul. And in my book, that's a pretty awesome legacy. Help me introduce Paul Gregory.
Wow. Thank you, Brett. Thanks to the judges and the committee and the EdisonReport. And thank you all for coming, and thanks to my wife, Victoria, who's put up with an awful lot. The old days, let's talk a little bit about the old days. In the old days, your biggest job as a lighting designer was convincing the architect and the client that they needed a lighting designer. And that war's been won by you people. And that's not the way it is anymore. The architect went to school and took a class called Building Systems. That was heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and lighting, the four things that hurt your design. That's the way we started. And That's the playing field we began with. We created equipment. We'd get a filter from Fran at Devon. We'd get a filter holder from Lance at Halo. We'd get a fixture from Lightolier. We'd put it together, make a fixture that had color and shielding and beam distribution. It was great. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. I'd like to say thank you to a lot of people. There was a fellow, Jim Cavanaugh, who kind of got me into school, flew out for my interview, and got me into the Art Institute of Chicago, the Goodman Theater School, which was a big deal. Jules Fisher, a number of people deserve some thanks. Jules Fisher would publish his light plots of his Broadway shows in Theater Crafts or Lighting Dimensions, and you could study them and you could figure out what was good and what was bad and why he double hung the acting areas. And George Eisenhower, I went to see George Eisenhower at Yale University in 1975. He had put a counterweight arbor on the outside of his building. He was the head of theater technology for the Yale School of Drama, to see if he could make a pipe come in accurately on an electric winch to a certain height. Jim Knuckles. I went to see Jim Knuckles and said, "Can I be happy in lighting design?" when I was switching over from Light Lab to focused lighting, and he said, "There's a challenge in every job," and it was so true. Howard Branston. I mean, Howard was a marvelous, marvelous man who taught everyone as much as he possibly could and slept everywhere like Washington. He taught everybody everything. But he would say things like, exterior lighting, nothing should be brighter than the moon. He'd say, rules are the enemy of creativity. He was a marvelous teacher. Sonny Sonnenfeld. Sonny was wonderful and would give to everyone as much as he could, all his knowledge. Jonathan Spears. Jonathan was my best friend. Jonathan died 12 years ago in June. And we would travel the world doing teaching and speaking and going to the World's Fairs. Before the internet, you would go to the World's Fairs to get new ideas for creativity. And we had a wonderful time. Well, I told you that because those are the people that inspired me, and that you're the people to inspire the next group. And that's about our most important task. Thank you.